العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. And this is a great blessing to be here with Sheikh Abdellah, our close friends. This is alhamdulillah, it's a great blessing. That alhamdulillah, I'm very happy to be here today with Sheikh Abdellah. We have been very close friends for many years, and we led a few years together. And I always like to be with him and sit with him. Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I memorized the Quran when I was 17 years. I was in public school at the time. I was in high school. And I memorized by myself at home. I wasn't going to any special school or anything. But alhamdulillah, I learned a few very valuable lessons. Growing up here in this country, all my life I lived here in this country. And subhanAllah, I think all of us and all of our children, they're like flowers. And the flower or any plant needs a lot of very specific things in its environment for it to grow and to blossom and to become a beautiful flower. So if you were to take this flower and put it in the desert without water, without proper sunlight and shade, it will probably die, and you won't you won't be able to see this flower blossom. But if you take care of this flower and put it in the right environment, give it the right amount of water, the right amount of sunlight, it will grow and blossom and it will become a very beautiful flower. So our kids in this country, in this environment that we live in, it is like taking this flower and putting it in a desert without any proper care. And it's very important that we have to work very hard to give the flower the proper environment at home and have the proper way to make this flower grow. So we cannot expect our children, when you put them in this harsh environment, for them on their own to become very good Muslims and follow Islam and pray. You cannot expect this from our children. You cannot come when your child is like 15 or 16 and then start to complain, why is my child not praying, why is he not memorizing the Quran, when you have not provided this proper environment for them. Because we cannot expect our children to grow up to be good Muslims in this very harsh environment that we put them. So by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, but then I thank my parents for providing this great environment for me to grow and to love the Quran and to be interested in memorizing the Quran. My father, may Allah bless him, he was also a hafiz, and he always, when I was very young, when I was 4 or 5 years old, every day after Fajr, my father would read one juz to my mother. And when he would read this one juz, he would rarely make a mistake. Every day I would watch him, very rarely he would make a mistake when he would read to my mother. And to me, this was very fascinating to me. How can a human memorize this book and read it from cover to cover with very few mistakes? And this was something in our home that I used to always watch my father do. Every day after Fajr, we pray Fajr together in the house, and then he would read the juz that he was supposed to read to my mother. My mother would be holding the mushaf, he would be reciting, and rarely would my mother correct my father when he was reciting. So this, just seeing this sparked my interest. SubhanAllah, how can someone do this? How can someone memorize the Quran and have such a strong memorization that he would read without very few mistakes? And at that time, I had like few surahs memorized, so I started to realize, you flip through the Quran, and there's a lot of pages. And I remember I used to go up to my dad and I said, Baba, do you have the entire Quran memorized? He said, yes. I said, every single page of the Quran? He said, yes, every single page. I said, but I'm barely memorizing 5-6 pages. How can someone memorize the entire Quran and be able to, So, so that was my first, that was one of the first things that sparked my interest in the Quran. And the other thing was, SubhanAllah, my father, may Allah bless him, when I was growing up, he used to always have the cassette player in the Quran. The cassette player in the house was always playing Quran, always. Never turned it off unless we go to sleep. So I remember I memorized like Juz Tabarak and Juz Amma. When I was before I entered school, and I didn't know how to read or even pronounce. I just by listening to the cassette player, I memorized these two juz. And my mother, she didn't know that I was memorizing until one day, like someone was saying, who knows Surah Amma? And, oh, I know. I said, no, you don't know Surah. You know Surah. So I recited the whole Surah. She didn't know that I had memorized, these. This cassette player was we never played anything other than the Quran until I assumed that this device was called the Quran. I didn't know that you can put any cassette in there and play anything. I just assumed that this device was the Quran. So, I say turn on the Quran. I didn't say turn on the cassette player. I didn't, So, subhanAllah, so, my parents, may Allah bless them, they worked very hard to create this environment that will allow the flower to grow. And this, through over time, by constantly hearing the Quran and constantly being connected with the Quran, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I made the intention when I was 17 to finish memorizing the Quran. And alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when I was younger, I used to, my memorization was very quick. I memorized almost 25 juz in maybe 9 months. 9 months, alhamdulillah, it took me 9 months to finish. But my dad, my father, he used to tell me, he said, the hard part is not memorizing the Quran. The hard part is to maintain the memorization of the Quran. Because once you memorize the Quran, now you are responsible for reviewing the Quran so you don't forget it. Because if you memorize the Quran, and then you forget the Quran, then you are held accountable by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he just told me, he said, don't think the fact that you now memorize the Quran, that now your job is easy. But no, now you have more responsibility. Now you have to maintain this Quran that you have memorized. So, alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after I finished memorizing the Quran, my dad, he used to let me lead the salah in the house, when we were in the house. So I used to lead Fajr and Maghrib and Isha. And in each rak'ah, I would recite 2.5 pages. So after Isha, I would have almost finished one juz, and I would pray 2 more rak'ahs qiyam. I would finish the juz for that day. So I used to do this regularly in the house. I would lead the salah and I would, recite from, the khatma. Until, alhamdulillah, I made, a few khatmas like this. And slowly, alhamdulillah, after a lot of encouragement, I kept, reviewing the Quran. And alhamdulillah, so after I got married, alhamdulillah, my wife, she told me, she said, you should read the Quran in front of a sheikh. Because before this time, I was only by myself. I didn't go and see a sheikh and read the Quran in front of someone. So she said, you should go and seek someone, a sheikh, and read the Quran in front of them so that they can correct your pronunciation. So I said, okay, inshallah. So she said, there's someone, his name is Sheikh Abdellah. He lives in this area. Go and call him. And, make a... So I said, okay, I will. So I called the sheikh. And I called and said, Sheikh, I want to read the Quran in front of you. I want to be ijazah for you. Okay, come to my masjid after Maghrib. So I said, okay. So at that time, I wasn't living here, so I traveled an hour away. I go to the masjid, I see him for Maghrib. So I said, Sheikh, I'm ready. I want to, recite the Quran. He looks at me and he says, you want to recite the Quran in front of me, yeah? So okay, come tomorrow after Maghrib. Okay. So I said, okay, Sheikh, no problem. So the next day, I go and travel an hour. So I see him and he says, you want to recite the Quran in front of me? Okay, khair, inshallah. Why don't you come next week and we start? I said, okay, no problem, Sheikh.
He's testing my patience.
Yeah? He's testing my patience. So I said, okay, Sheikh, no problem. So the next week, I'm preparing one juz. I'm reading the one juz over and I'm ready to recite one juz in front of the Sheikh, and I want to finish. So he says, okay, start. We finished 4 pages. So says, okay, that's enough for today, come tomorrow. Sheikh, okay. So I kept doing this every day. I would go and I would travel, an hour and I'm expecting to finish one juz, like if I read 4 pages every day, it will take me, a long time. And sometimes I go and he's not there, And then after I finished 20 juz on the Sheikh, then he actually would start taking me seriously. Then we would sit and recite 1 juz at a time. But it took me like maybe a year and a half of, just like after I finished 20 juz on the Sheikh, then it's okay, now you are a serious person. Now we can finish the khatma now. And then after I finished the first khatma, we had to make another khatma. And the second khatma didn't take too much time. After I finished, and the Sheikh said, do you know why it was very hard for you in the very beginning? I want to test you. You know why? I said, no. He said, you see, because when you finish reading the Quran and the Sheikh gives you the ijazah, he does not just give you the certificate that you read the Quran properly. He needs to make sure that you understand the value of this Quran. If it was easy for you, if it was easy for everyone, they would take this certificate and then after they take it, they would neglect the Quran. They would not feel the importance, the value of this Quran. So the reason is, I want you to understand that this Quran is so valuable that you have to strive very hard and you have to work very hard to get this Quran that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us. So this is my advice to all of you is to provide the right environment for your kids to love the Quran. If you do that, you won't have to push your kids to memorize the Quran. By themselves, they will find this something in them that they love the Quran, they want to be a part of the Quran, they want to memorize the Quran, they want to understand the Quran. You just have to provide the right environment for them. You have to give the flower the right amount of water, the right amount of sunlight, in order for the flower to grow and to bloom and to become a beautiful flower. So this is my advice to all of you. جزاكم الله خيرا. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.